Hi, this is Pierre Lacocque, a band leader of Mississippi Heat in Chicago, and you're listening to Talking Blues.
Pierre, let's start with a little bit about your family background because I find it very interesting and especially your early years. But give us a little insight into your family background.
Well, it's both sides of the family are quite religious. We are from Belgium, from numerous generations back. Both sides of the family have been in Belgium for many, many generations. My family in Belgium, the major religion is Catholicism, but we are not Catholics. We are actually Protestants. So, and it goes to the back to France, to Protestant rebellions against Catholicism and so forth. So we have a long history of that. The Huguenots were quite influential. Huguenots being in France, and there was a massacre going on as well. But there is a Huguenot cross, which is a Protestant cross that we cherish in the family. So on my father's side, I have ministers. My father was a minister. His father was a minister. And my father became a theologian, the professor of theology of Old Testament. And the whole family, as I said, we're very Christians in our hearts. And I would even say Judeo-Christians, because we were quite influenced by Judaism in terms of religious viewpoint and existential way of looking at life and religious way of looking at life. So we actually quite Jewish in our hearts, not politically, but religiously speaking, in terms of meaning of life and how to treat your neighbor. And Jesus for us is a central Jew. So Jesus really, before there was a schism or a break between Judaism and Jewish Jesus followers, was very much of a Jew and reflecting an aspect of Judaism that we like, which is to embrace the world as opposed to being an island. And so religiously I was raised very early, from the very beginning, to really follow Judeo-Christian values. And to this day, I carry in me more of a universal still, but a very influential. My mother, my father, my grandparents built the church in their own town. Their family was very involved in building a church in their small town in Belgium. So we were always surrounded with a religious appreciation of life.
I found it interesting that at one point you actually went to a Jewish school.
Correct.
So I find that interesting as your dad is a minister and to actually send his kids to a Jewish, was it an Orthodox Jewish school?
Absolutely, a Jewish Orthodox school. My grandfather and my father, so my father's father, we were profoundly, both sides of the family, and of course Belgium in general and Europe was very very affected by the Holocaust and by Nazism and things like that. And we were, as a family, quite involved in sheltering, Jewish families, but also non-Jewish families during the war. And my grandfather was very, very attracted to the Holocaust, but also to the Judaism. And actually, after being a minister late in life, he converted himself to Judaism. So he became Jewish, and he moved to Israel and married. When my grandmother died, he remarried with a Jewish woman, Valentine. Her name was, from Tunisia. And French speaking and all that. And they lived near Tel Aviv. And we did visit, I did visit him and so forth. So he was totally into Judaism. With us, the issue was more the Christ. Jesus Christ was very important to us, and we did not feel a need, all of us really, except my grandfather, to split and to say, you know what, Jesus was not messianic, and we feel that he is. So that's kind of the split there. But we're very Jewish at heart. But anyway, my grandfather knew the Grand Rabbi of Belgium, to make it short, and said to the Grand Rabbi, "See, look, your mission as a Jew, as a Jewish community, is to welcome those who want to join you, who want like the branch of the tree. They want to come, and so you cannot say no." And it's true. They are actually, there's 7 rejections before you become Jewish. But anyways, he convinced the Grand Rabbi and a few rabbis. They were very much, and also a professor, a Jewish professor that was very influential in Belgium, to convince the school to have the 3 of us, my brother, who's 19 months older, my sister, who is 4 years younger than me, to join the school. So I joined the school. We were the only non-Jews ever. I mean, fully non-Jews. Eventually, down the road, half and half, was part of the school. But we were the only ever, and ever since, non-Jewish people. They went to the Orthodox school. We learned Hebrew to read it. My first alphabet was Hebrew. Um, so we learned biblical, Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, modern Hebrew, all of that. So, and we were wearing yarmulkes, the whole thing. So it was quite unusual, and but for us it was normal because we never thought of anything different.
Which is totally understandable, and there's no way that I can ask you, you know, how that, like how that affected you. Like I just find that one thing to grow up very religiously is one thing, but to actually grow up in multiple religion, I think is even more interesting. And it's probably not fair to ask you what that was like because you don't know any other. But looking back on it, how did that affect you or influence you?
Well, so first of all, there was harmony between my schoolmates and I, that I did not feel. I mean, I felt I was a non-Jew though as I grew older, because that's when you start looking at girls and things like that. So I knew. I got some messages, let's say, from parents and things like that. But overall, though, it was a community, and to this day, I still feel a bond, and I still feel an affinity even with Jew. If my wife, who is Cuban, if my wife had been Jewish, out of respect for her history and ancestry and all of that, and I would have converted out of respect. But out of respect, I would have done that. But my wife was not Jewish, and I'm very happy to be Judeo-Christian, as it is.
I get the impression that religion was a central part of your life in your early years, where it kind of didn't offer you the opportunities of maybe getting into things like music or sports as much as maybe other kids. How did music come into your life?
Well, I was very much of a non-verbal child. I had a very difficult childhood, a very severe father, authoritarian, and had to deal with a lot of cultural issues in Belgium too. They look at kids as little adults, So to be a child, it was not that easy in the context I lived in.
Hmm.
I mean, I had friends of mine who had parents who did encourage soccer, which is my love, one of my sports that I love to watch it to this day. But it was not encouraged at all in my home, because we are very stern, very Protestant, very, study, 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 read, read, read. That was the. So my father had a love for music, interestingly enough. We love Sidney Bechet. We love the gospel singers, Clara Ward. I enjoyed myself a lot. Aretha Franklin was really moving me, and Ray Charles, but it was not that encouraged at all. And, we would have sometimes we would listen to a record together. And my father was moved and all of that, so I could see that music meant a lot to him. But overall, I had to keep it in. I had to keep it in. It's only when I came to Chicago, I was 16 and a half, that things changed in terms of my family attitudes, and I found blues. I found Chicago blues that hit me in the heart. In Europe there was some bluesy, let's say, feels, but it was never enough for me to learn the harmonica. Uh, my father had given me a harmonica when I was 3 years old, and I knew in my heart that the harmonica was for me. I was crying when he gave me, not crying for the gift, because of course I was happy, but I was touched. But just the sound of the harmonica made me cry, and I was 3 years old. So I knew in my heart, in my soul, that the sound of the harmonica spoke to me. It was a 4-hole plastic harmonica they give, but it was enough to know. And then I listened to a lot of harmonica players, but eventually the Beatles, whatever, who I got to appreciate enormously later in life, not at the time, but later to this day. I said, "Holy cow, man! These guys were something else." But at the time, even Elvis Presley did not. As much as it's so bluesy and it's so interesting in terms of arrangements. The arrangements that Elvis Presley. There's a very interesting stuff going on with Elvis Presley, because the songwriters, they would give him the songs, were provided songs that were very well arranged. I'm into melody. I'm a melody man, so I listen to melodies all the time. It's like I enjoy trying to infuse melody into my playing. If somebody says, "Man, you're so melodic," it's quite a compliment to me, because I try to, as I say, infuse melodies, even children melodies, when I do a solo and things like that.
If we go back to moving to Chicago, I would presume that that's a major culture shock coming from Belgium and different countries that you lived in Europe. Tell me, as a 16-year-old, what that journey was like to come to America, and how did you feel about it, and how did it feel when you got here?
Well, so it was hard to say goodbye, especially to my grandparents, because we very close knit family, and I have cousins, I have aunts and uncles and all that still in Belgium. There's a big, actually all the families in Belgium, other than the immediate family here in Chicago, but so that was hard. But deep down, I kind of felt I needed liberation. I felt emotionally stifled with the Belgian culture, stifled in terms of do's and don't do's, the way to act, the way not to act, and I did not feel appreciated for who I was per se. So, and again, I had, to this day, my best friend is from that school. He lives in Israel. So his name is Daniel, and he's the dearest to me. To this, we keep in touch, visit each other, stuff like that. But in terms of the culture itself, it was very stifling and not very, if I can use the word, artistic. In other words, not allowing the certain things to come out per se. Soccer, yes, but in my family, as I mentioned, it was. So I was looking forward to the United States, thinking that, first we were liberated in Belgium, as you know, by the Americans. So we had an idealization in Belgium. And if I go to Poland, because I play, internationally, I go to Poland, man, the way they love Americans over there, because, Americans had been helping Poland, to really get away from Russia and Putin and all these people, so and communism. So the we Belgian, my generation before me and us, we had this idealization, of United States, and of course the values, the equality supposedly, and all of that. But so we were looking for it, and to me, I was quite welcomed in Chicago. I was different, but a welcomed difference for me, being a foreigner. Of course, being white helped, I suppose, and I had an accent, as I still do. All of that was not a negative at all. And even in the black community, because early on I started, being obsessed with the harmonica. Once I heard blues on the harmonica, I said, "This is my path. This is my life."
So when did that happen? How did that happen when you heard the blues in Chicago, and when you decide that this is your life and this
So
is
we
your
came
path?
in 1969. My parents had come. My father had come to teach in Chicago. He had received a tenured position at the Chicago Theological Seminary as a professor, Old Testament. So he and my sister and my mother had stayed in Chicago. We stayed in Belgium, my brother Michel and I, until 1969. So we came back as a family, final, immigration. Um, and that summer of 1969, we lived in Hyde Park, Chicago, on the University of Chicago campus, University of Chicago in Hyde Park. And one summer, I guess that summer, a few weeks, I suppose, maybe a few months, there was events on campus for welcoming students back to campus. I was not aware of all of this. On hindsight, that's what it was. So I was walking one day alone. I was kind of bored. It was hot and so forth, and I heard something, a sound or some kind, or it was a band or something, but a sound I'd never heard in my life ever. I never heard. So and it was blocks away, but for some reason I think they may have kept the windows open or the doors open, to welcome students in. Welcoming students back to the university. It was on University of Chicago campus. So I kept, it just, it's like I was possessed in the most positive way, and I kept going. Where is that coming from? So I followed, I tried to follow the sound until I got there. And it was an Ida Noise. It's a building in Chicago on campus, Ida Noise, and people had to show their cards to get in. I had no idea about anything of that because it was new to me. But they let me in. It let me in. And on stage there were a quartet. It was a drum, bass, guitar, and a harmonica player. A harmonica player with an amplifier on a chair, and sounds coming out of that amplifier. What? I mean, the sound was it was like a horn, very warm, uh, amazing sound. And eventually that harmonica player played La Cucaracha, which I knew, of course, I knew the melody. And I couldn't believe it because there was a melody, and being a melodic guy. So, and it was Big Walter, Big Walter Horton. I'd never heard of him. I didn't know. He was to me older, much older, because I was 16, and I didn't know anything about. But once I heard that harmonica was on a Saturday night, Saturday. On Sunday, I go to the store to buy a harmonica. It was closed, And then on Monday, I go and finally buy my first Horner harmonica. But that moment, I always say, was like a religious experience for me. I mean, religious in the sense of changing my life in the most positive, soulful way.
So begins the journey of learning how to play the harmonica. I don't. How easy was that? And it's not. I mean, I know that you can easily make sounds out of it immediately, but to replicate or try to imitate what you heard with Big Walter Horton, like I presume that's not an easy journey. How
No.
did that journey begin? And
That's an awesome question. Well, first, the background would be I was smitten, so I had that drive, I had the passion, and for whatever reason, my parents and my father in particular was not against it at all. So I had all these kind of permissions. So what I did, I went to the lab school, which is the high school of the University of Chicago, as a fringe benefit to my father teaching at the Chicago Theological Seminary. They offered there was some free tuition or something like that for professors. So I went to the lab school. It's called the Laboratory High School. So I went there, and a few people my age or older, whatever, were playing harmonica too, starting. So I would ask questions. I say, "How do you do that? How do you bend the note, man?" And then I start buying books about a lot of albums, but also harmonica books. There were not too many. There was one called Tony Glover, who had written something about trying to teach you how to do it. But there was not much at the time. Now is a flood, especially with YouTube.
mm-hmm.
But so I read, I tried to understand, I asked questions, tips and so forth. But I learned by ear. So I would listen, try to figure out what key, and I knew zero. I didn't know music at all. I don't to this day. I don't read music, but I do know way more now because I teach my musicians, bass lines, because I write the songs. So, I'm basically the songwriter to Mississippi Heat. So I have to teach them and say, look, here's the bass line, here's the tempo, go to that chord and all that. And I'm always open to suggestions, of course, and all that. So, but now I'm more seasoned, so I can have a musical talk with people.
I wonder how long it took for you to get to a point where you thought you were a decent player.
Well, first of all, it took me maybe 6 to 9 months to feel that I was better than I was, because I was bad. I was awful. But I had such a confidence, I had such a excitement about being able to bend a certain notes that I thought I was very advanced. I was not advanced at all. But people were very kind, very kind to me, and especially the African American community. I would go to Teresa's, where Junior Wells would play on Mondays. He had I don't know if yeah, he was on Mondays at Teresa. So I often would go that night with my brother Michel. I was very shy, very shy. I'm very introverted. Now I'm balanced with the years, but at the time, very, very shy, very introverted, and was not the kind of guy. But Michel, my brother, encouraged me, saying, "Come on, we're going to take a taxi. We're going to go." So we went often to Teresa's, and my brother again talked to Junior and said, "Look, my brother Pierre, he loves the harmonica. Would you mind?" I said, "Not at all." So he called me on stage, Junior, and I was 9 months, 6 to 9 months. I was horrific. I'm sure I was bad. I mean, bad. But at the time, I didn't. I couldn't judge. Now I can tell you I was bad. But Junior calls me on stage, and but I have to say, profoundly always felt the harmonica. So I mean, I feel it. It's a bodily thing. So it's not just an intellect. It's a heart thing. It's a soul thing for me. So he invited me, and I started playing whatever. But I saw something in his eyes, and his eyes were like, I felt love. I felt love from him. I could cry right now, but I could literally cry right now. But he looked at me with affection, and maybe I would like to think an appreciation of how profound this instrument is to me. And over the years with Junior Wells, because we were in France, because we traveled, and it's something sometimes we were on the same festivals. I remember one in France, you would say to George Bass, his guitar player, who became my guitar player with time, but towards the end of his life, George joined Mississippi Heat. George Bass said, you see, uh, that's the way the harmonica should sound. So things like that, so I didn't see Junior too often, but when I did, it was always amazingly welcoming. I actually had Junior accept. He told me, "Oh, Pierre, I said, I have a song for you that I would love you to do." So, oh, Pierre, just call me, man. I'll come and I'll do it with you. And so I had it was the earlier recordings that we did, and his manager nixed it. So he said, "No, no, no. Who are they? None of it." So it never happened. But in terms of love, in terms of mentoring and respect. I always got that from Junior, always over the years, and I grew over the years. I mean, this is decades later now. So it's a story that moves me. Actually, that night, Marco, that night, he gives me two harmonicas the first time he hears me. He gives me a small harmonica, which I don't know if I still have or not, but it's in the key of E, a high pitch. He could sing in any key, all the 12 keys. Junior told me, I don't care the key, man. I can sing in any key. But anyway, he usually play high pitch keys. Maybe it's easier through the PA, to make sure the band does not drown him. I don't know. But he gave me an E harmonica, and he gave me his chromatic, 16-hole chromatic. So I said to him, Junior, thank you, but I can't, So I took the E harmonica, I kept it, and I said, look, Junior, Michel and I, my brother and I, would like to invite you to come. We're going to do some chicken Kiev. I don't know if you like chicken with butter, a lot of butter. So I said, look, we would love to have you. We live in Hyde Park. Would that be something you would be? Oh, yeah, yeah. So I said, look, why don't we invite you? And we set up a time and for chicken Kiev, but he never came. But he never came. But it does not mean that over the years the bond that I felt from me towards him, but him towards me changed. Not at all. So I don't think. I have to ask Michel. I don't recall if I kept the chromatic. In all honesty, I don't recall the chromatic part, but the small part I do, the E harmonica.
It's one thing to learn how to play the harmonica, but it's another thing to get your own sound. Or to, because there's a difference, I presume, between just playing the harmonica and playing the amplified harmonica.
Yeah, totally.
How long did it take you to get to a comfortable level with your amplified harmonica playing?
Well, first of all, the amplified harmonica is what turns me on. So, I mean, there are people who can do amazing acoustic work, certainly the Fox, Chase, all these percussive stuff that are just amazing, I mean, but for me, it's the horn that interests me. So at first, I studied note by note the best I could. All the masters, from of course Carrie Bell, being in Chicago, but Junior Wells was very much, of course, always Hoodoo Man, all of that. But James Cotton was the tone was phenomenal. His earlier years, phenomenal. Of course, Little Walter became my master. The creativity, the jump, the not repeating himself, the imagination and the sound and the echo. I play with the reverb and a bit of echo to lift my reverb when I play, and I took that from him. He didn't always do that. I mean, some of his recording, Little Walter, you don't hear always that echo because they used to have a bathroom. I don't know if you know, at Chess Records, they would put the amp in the bathroom with the echo or something, But it was beautiful. So at first for quite a few years I studied, walking by myself, songs like that, melody again, Scratch My Back, things like that. But after 5, 6 years, whatever, where I was so much into this, and so I I stopped. I stopped for about 8 years, maybe 7, 8 years, where I went the academic route. So I followed my father's path. My father has two PhDs, but I kind of felt the need, because I'm such a introvert, a need to put words to my story. It's very much that, so much had gone on in my life. I had eventually I was in Montreal, Canada, for 6 years, studying, but also playing. I had a band and all that over there too. But the emotionality of my life, the difficult years in my childhood with an authoritarian, again, father, who became my best friend later in life. So, absolutely my best friend. I've been blessed, really. I've had two fathers, though. One was very overwhelmingly crushing, and the other one who was apologetic. And when I was in early 20s, things changed for the better. When we came to Chicago, really, that's what did it for him in many ways.
Do you know why? I mean, how? Because people don't usually change, and especially somebody who's very demanding and who's very difficult on you. How did that change happen?
I would say, the financial context probably helped him calm down, because we were poor. We were very poor, even though he was a professor. Sometimes they would not pay him in Brussels, Belgium. So my mother did not work for a long time, raising us and all that. So my mother would have envelopes, budget to put the budget. I mean, that's how tight it was. I think in his case. His passion ruled him. He was a scholar. He passed away last year, 94 years old. But anyway, his passion ruled him, and to the point that he didn't want to be bothered. That's how excited he was about Old Testament and research. He was into philosophy. I mean, we knew world famous people, thanks to him, of course, at the University of Chicago, all of that. So he was that. And but he didn't have patience for the kids and for me. I think wisdom, the family is into very much, as I said, Judeo-Christian wisdom. So it's not just Judeo-Christian, it's about life. It's about, your neighbor. It's about your children. It's about communities, all of that. It's all about that. So eventually, I think I think things changed, for the better. Uh, maybe going to Montreal helped. He knew I suffered a lot. I had panic attacks, I had anxiety attacks, I had rough time in my late teens in Montreal. So I was going through a very difficult time, and I was still playing though. But the music did not feed me anymore. It stopped, and strangely enough, because it did not. So it was a message to me that I needed to put words to who am I? What is the meaning of my life? Why am I alive? And integrating all the teachings that I received from my school, the Orthodox school, but also my mother and my grandparents on both sides. We were always taught values. And so I needed time, and I went into psychology.
Okay, so you went into psychology, which is interesting because you're dealing with all these issues yourself personally. Having had panic attacks myself, I know how difficult that is,
Yeah,
and how it can certainly affect your life.
yeah.
But how difficult was it for you to decide I'm not going to play music anymore?
Well, I often talk about the word necessity. When people say, "Why do you play?" I say necessity. I need to play. I need, I need to be creative and all that. But at the time, it was necessity for me to stop, because the more I played, the deeper my depression was. Because it was anxiety, it was panic attacks, but it was also profound, really suicidal kind of feeling. So and the more I played, and I was studying at the time too, but it just amplified the worst, in me at the time. So I had to stop, and I said to myself, eventually, I mean, I talked to my brother, my sister, who's a little younger. He's also one of my best friends. My brother and sister, we're very close. My parents and all of that. Whoever loved me, I would tell them. So it was kind of a normal stop. I had to stop. I had to get my head together. I was barely able to go I was in McGill in Montreal University, and I was barely able to stay in class, to go to class. Uh, but I had a sense of pride, I suppose, maybe duty, that I don't want to be a failure, even though I felt like one. But I said, no. So I kept, in spite of my pain, really, my anguish. One thing about me, Marco, that worked is that people liked me. So I had now don't ask. I met people along the way that to this day I'm close to, like in Montreal, let's say, that I got along with. That somehow there was an affinity. I have two Jewish friends by chance. It's not like I was seeking. To this day, they keep in touch with Skype, whatever. To this day, one is a musician, one is not. And in my classes in McGill, so I was lucky that way, but I was hanging by a thread. So I had to. I started reading philosophy, all kinds of that my father was into, that I rebelled against because I was not. I was more into life, but I was not allowed. So it was difficult.
I wonder. I mean, we should probably clarify that all that you were going through was not because of music, right? Like the anxiety or
No,
the panic attack had nothing to do directly involved with music. It was just
no. I was very. The band I was playing with, or the bands, I had a blues band, and the Albert Faley Blues Band, in Montreal, and no, very welcoming. All of that. It's more that the music brought me to a non-verbal depth that amplified something that needed to be worked out, and that had to do with my identity. Why am I alive? Why do I choose to be alive? And it's amplified that. So I stopped for 5 6 years, studied and became a writer, things like that, and it really helped enormously. It really helped. It gave me a sense of balance until I couldn't hold up off anymore. That was about 6 7 years later when my studies were done. I was working as a psychologist and everything, where I had another uh, crisis, midlife, whatever you want to call it, again, severe. I mean, I was already married and everything. And that told me, man, you growing up too old with psychology. You need your inner child needs to come out more. I mean, I was not unhappy at all. I mean, because I was doing research, I was following my father's really footstep, and I had that excitement. I mean, talk about reading, taking notes, or publishing. All that was very much my joy. But I also noticed that my family paid a price, my kids and my wife, whatever, to see me. I mean, I was like my dad. Not as bad in my temperament, because I'm not like my dad. I'm more like my mother, who was a very kind soul, but into the consumption, the intensity. I needed. It was too much for my family, so I decided. I had a crisis, and I said, you know what? I need to go back to music, and that was in the 80s, 1980, late 80s.
I wonder at that point, did you play music? Like, did you play any music at all during this time? Like, did you ever
Very,
pick up the harmonica and just blow on it?
very, very little. I would go back maybe a little bit here and there, but nothing to keep it up. Nothing. And I would have occasionally like parties with colleagues, say, oh, there's a party, so maybe I would play, but nothing. I would not keep. I would not. I did not keep up with which actually helped me down the road, because when I came back to music 8 years later or whatever, in late 80s, I became myself. Now, I already had done the research, or the big Walter, the little Walter, all these guys. Not that I was that fantastic at it, but I already had done that path, so I could build. My memory was still there. It's just an issue of now practicing. Making sure I get my wind and everything. And then I started becoming myself, really. My own phrasing, my own songs, and I started, and Michel was my brother was very influential in telling me, look, write your own songs. Now that you have a band called Mississippi Heat, I don't sing, so I write the songs, the lyrics and the music, and I have, uh, people singing my songs. Really, that's what
Okay,
it
so
is.
but before we get to Mississippi Heat, you decide that okay, I need to start playing again. You pick up the harmonica. How how much had you lost, or how good were you at that point? And then what steps do you take in order to get to Mississippi Heat?
So I would say I still had the basics in terms of the bending. I'm not saying the bending was superb, but the bendings were there. And so I had a familiarity with the instrument already, the basics, Um, and so that helped me. And then I started catching up because I had never heard of Kim Wilson, for example. I've never heard of Kim Wilson. So, and then, what's his name? Mark Hummel, people like that. Primich, Gary Primich, people like that. I had not followed them at all. I had stopped. I had stopped. So, friends of mine, people I meet at jam sessions, because I would go to jam sessions, Kingston Mines in Chicago and other jam sessions on Sunday somewhere, in a cafe, some kind of cafe, and I meet people there. We become friends. John McDonald, who founded Mississippi Heat with me, and Bob Stroger and Robert Covington. I would meet them there, or and then we start. So things build up, and then they would mention names to me. Oh, have you heard of Kim Wilson? No, I haven't. So it's just like, wow. So that brought another dimension for me. Um, Billy Branch, people like that in Chicago. I get to to get to know them personally, but certainly also their music. No, but for some reason the drive and the passion was I got to be me. And I said that humbly because I said, I'm not going to be a little Walter. I mean, learning a roller coaster, note by note, which is one of the most difficult songs there is, amplified wise, whatever, songs like that. I'm not going to play a roller coaster. I've tried many times, and all that, but it takes. My joy was not to repeat. My joy was to build from what's there. So without James Cotton, little Big Walter, I would not be here today because they already have the foundation and have. So once in a while, I throw an ode to them. A passage in a boogie woogie. I would do a little Walter passage as an homage. Gino Wells, people like that. No, that my joy was to be you, so be the best you can, and that's what helped me.
So in 1991, you go to a jam, or you get together with a few people at Cafe Luna, and
Yeah.
this is the beginning of Mississippi Heat. Do you know what that? I mean, you've done like 14 albums, so you know now. But back then, did you know what you wanted to accomplish with Mississippi Heat?
No, because Mississippi Heat did not exist yet. I was prior to Cafe Lura. It's Cafe Lura. I was just sitting in, playing with some bands that welcomed me as a harmonica player or what have you. But Cafe Lura is where the John McDonald, Bob Stroger on bass, and Robert Covington on drums and vocals. We were a quartet, and then my brother, again Michel, who was in the audience, could see how excited it was for me. He said, "Why don't you form a band?" So we talked, the four of us, and they all said, yeah, yeah, let's do it. And Michel said, I'm going to become your manager. So I'll find work for you guys. Don't worry. But if you want to, I'm in as well. So Michel, it was the first manager. It still is manager, entitled in many ways, but he does every single day work for Mississippi Heat.
Can I ask you what did Michelle? Michelle is the one who made this happen, by the way.
Okay.
But what did Michelle? What was his background that he could become a manager?
So it was just new. Everything, it was all extravagant. It was not based on any kind of experience or anything like that. It was based on passion. It was
Hmm.
based on meaning. It was based on belief that, on belief that there's something here to develop, and faith that let's do it. Plus, Stroger, okay, who was Jimmy Rogers, all these people before, by the time I met him, he already had those, amazing pedigree, and Robert Covington's the same, and John McDonald too. I mean, so it was just a faith. Let's give it a shot, and it kept going up.
It's difficult keeping a band, as you would know, and you've had a lot of different musicians. How do you maintain that Mississippi Heat ideal or philosophy or sound through all this?
So that's a wonderful question. I mean, again, my brother was fundamentally influential by telling me, Pierre, or Manu is my nickname. Write your own songs. That's what's going to keep Mississippi Heat. You write your own songs. It's your own soul. It's your own. It's you. Everybody else around you, as world class as they are, because they are absolutely world class. I've been blessed to, Carl Weathersby, people like that. I was like, but it was my songs. All the last album, the new one that you have not heard yet, Marco, is all the songs are mine. It's the first time ever. I usually share, hey, Carl, you want to do, or anybody, that I know is a songwriter like Aineta Weiser, people like that. I will give them a few songs per album, but this time is the first ever 14 songs where I wrote them all because of COVID. I always write songs, so I say I had a lot, and I said, well, why not? I'm in the stage in my life now. Why not push me a little more? Because in the beginning I was a sideman in my own band, in many ways, because I was the least experienced. So I had to be, which I tend to be, I would like to think, humble. So, I let other people like Dietra Farr, in the band guide me. And Dietra was to this day, an amazing friend and protector and inspiring to me. He said, Pierre, don't do it this way, do it that way. But no, 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 let's do it. So she was in my corner, and really amazing friend to me.
I wonder, when did you find the balance? Because obviously you still did your other work, and then you decided to start a band,
Yeah.
which is a lot of work. And if you felt that you were too much one thing at one point, with your work, and you had to have a little more fun, starting a band is not easy, and a
Mm.
lot of work goes into it.
Yeah.
How did you find that balance between the two?
Well, I found that music is more of a physical release for me, so I don't need to play music 12 hours a day. When I was writing and doing my research, I had a stamina. It kept going, kept going. I was very hooked. So that was a plus. Plus, I also learned my lesson with the first passion I had, which is not to repeat it. So to focus on my wife Vicky, on the children, and to have always it's a balance, Marco, and you know that because I can hear in your questions, yeah, it's a balance. But to me, love and work, like Freud would say, Freud say, what's the meaning of life? Well, love and work. So for me, it's equally important. And we have grandchildren, as you know, so all of that is profoundly meaningful to me. So I try, and my wife Vicky, I have to work with her at times because sometimes too much, my traveling too much. So she and I, we kind of negotiate vacations or time out or family time out. She knows, though, she knows no matter what that she cannot ask me to stop, and I respect that and I appreciate that. In return, I give her as much quality time as I can because she knows she cannot. I mean, you can imagine there are times where the couple, my marriage, and we've been married over 40 years, so and we're still going, so it's good. But it's compromise, it's discussing, and there are times where it's really thin. Like we say, "Ooh, what do we do?" So it's negotiating, and she's very invested in this as I am with her. It's compromise, it's compromise, and I try to get her in the excitement. On the last CD, she did the painting, for example, of the CD cover of Madeleine. She's the one, yeah. So I get her involved like that. Or she travels with me when I go to Switzerland. I just not too long ago I was at Luzerne, the amazing Luzerne Festival. I was there for a week, and so she came with me. So there are perks I try to share with her when they occur. No, but I try to balance. I try to give my undivided attention if I can. But she knows, though, down the road, that she's going to see me like this because I'm practicing. And my friends now, they know. In the beginning, when they met me, they asked Vicky, "What's wrong with him?" I said, "Well, he's playing. That's what he is doing."
How about the writing of songs? How easy did that come to you? Because it's one thing to learn how to play the harmonica. It's another thing to get your own style. Another thing to start a band. But it's completely different things to write songs.
That's an excellent. So for me, typically I go with the nonverbal first. So I mean, you can imagine how many thousands of songs I have here at home and how many CDs I have. All of that. I uh, I I go to songs or even a passage of a song. It could be even 10 seconds of a turnaround, for example, of a song. For example, and I say, "Wow, wait a second, I can do something with that." So I listen to. Typically, when I write a song, is based on a mood. So that the song gives me, maybe the song may be too slow for me or too fast for me, but I go with the mood and I say to myself, what am I feeling? What am I feeling when I'm listening to this? Because, for example, Jimmy Reed, I just happen to, like many of us, like Jimmy Reed. So I like those lumps, the heavy bass, that kind of stuff, very much so. So I listen, I say, well, what am I thinking? So I have images, and when I have a theme or a topic, I write down as many free association idea to the image that I have. If it's, for example, a stepchild, which I have a song like that, it's not a yeah. So it's called Blue Amber. That's a new song. Blue Amber is about a stepchild, and the mother of that child tells her her lover, I said, "How come you don't like Amber? I mean, Amber is my child." So I had that image of poor Amber, frankly, and so the whole song is based on that. So I said to myself, okay, so dealing with the stepchild, what could be the theme? Well, he's jealous. You get green when you see her. You're jealous of my love for Amber, meaning her. It's a woman singing. So you don't want to share my love, which is a very common theme. Um, Very common thing, So in blended families, you give her too much, you give your child too much, you don't give me enough. The jealousy or the possessiveness, whatever. So a lot of the stories are based on stories that I know, that I personally know, such as drug abuse. I mean, I do. I need to slow down with that lately because I do a lot of songs with that lately. But it's true in my own family. People. I won't mention names, but so that affects and destroy a family and kids and marriages and all. So I have a song, at least one on the new album with that. Yeah, but so I try to be honest about it and try to feel that I'm hooked myself to the story, that I have a hook.
Tell me about the new album. This is the 14th album. When is it coming out? What's it called? Any details you can share?
Sure, thank you, Michael. So it's called Don't Look Back. Don't Look Back, and it's mixed. It's finished. There's one song we're going to review next Monday. We need to tweak a few things there. So after that, after Monday, I would assume we will be done, and then I'll send it to mastering. I have two record companies that are willing to kind of check it out, but doesn't. I don't want to. I want to have a licensing deal if I can. I don't want to sell. There's too much money involved in this, unless a company, these are known companies. So I may just say, you know what, licensing, and I'll keep the masters, and then down the road it comes back to me and my kids, and grandkids. So hopefully, I would say by the end of August, I would say we probably will be it will be out. Um, and there are 14 songs, as I mentioned, all original. We have Kenny Smith as a guest. We have, Billy Flynn as a guest on most songs. We have Cheryl Youngblood, who's our new singer. She has her own career as well, but she is phenomenal singer. I mean, ridiculous, ridiculous. Inetta Weiser is still with us. She's had health issues, so I cannot always go with Inetta, internationally, things like that. So Cheryl is the one that I give the work to, but with Inetta when I can, even the two of them on stage. I always keep an eye on Inetta. She's been with us 20 years now, so, and more. So, and then Danisha Hamilton is a singer that I use as well. And she's on Madeline, the last CD as well. So these are the three main singers. I don't know if you heard of Omar Coleman, a harmonica player,
I
singer
have.
from Chicago. Phenomenal, is a dear, dear friend. So we do a duet together, a boogie woogie duet, chord response. He goes acoustic, I go amplified. I am thrilled with this, and he sings one of my songs as well, and we do two harmonicas on that song as well. So I'm excited. I think this is probably the bluesiest project I've done in years.
Okay, so you're going to be coming to the Toronto Beaches Jazz Festival July 21st.
Yes, Sunday.
And you're going on a little bit of a tour across Canada and down the Northeast. My final question to you is from that little kid with the plastic harmonica and the kid who played in Montreal, gave up music, and now you've done 14 albums with Mississippi Heat. How do you look back on your musical career?
Do you know, I'm very proud and I'm privileged, and I don't know how I survived all these years because being a band leader is not easy, and ups and downs and downs and ups and all that kind of stuff. But I feel very proud of the work that I put into this, and the soul that I put into this, and the emotions and the commitment. I always I like to think that I treat my musicians with the utmost respect. I always put them first financially. So as much as people may not stay with me or not, it's typically, I would say, typically not because of personality issues, not at all. It has to do with finance, or the wife telling the musician, "Look, it's me, or or are we done?" A lot of our musicians have had health issues. Some passed away, things like that. So, and now Inetta has had health issues. She's on the mend, but it's long. It's very chronic with Inetta, whom I love and whom I will never give up on. So I've been blessed to be part of a history in Chicago, of a blues history. Blessed to have people like Carl Weathersby, Dietrich Farr, of course, Inetta. Larry Bell, who's a dear friend of mine. Very blessed to have been part of their lives and them welcoming me. I'm a phone call away. Oh, Pierre, yeah, I'll come on down, whatever. Or I don't have Larry on this album. I had him on the last album. The next one, because I'm already working on the new one, I'm thinking of maybe having Larry, but I'll have to see. It's a pleasure. It's been an honor for me.
No, well put. That piece I think you did with Lurie called Madeleine, I think the title track. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah, he did. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Laurie did. Yeah, Laurie is the one I chose for that song. Yes.
Well, Pierre, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And it's a real pleasure getting to know you a bit. And
Oh,
I'm
same
hoping
here.
that I will see you at the Jazz Festival in
I
Toronto.
would love to meet you in person. And thank you for your questions, Marco. It felt so comfortable.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate
Okay.
it.
Take care.